Can everybody hear me okay?
Yeah.
Yes, perfect. So my name's Fiona. This is the first class that I've ever taught with Divination Academy, so bear with me. But I have been a student with divination in the past. I love the way that the school runs, and I'm just super excited that I get to be on this end of things now. So this is the Witch at Sunrise. So we're going to be talking a lot about the origin of the witch and kind of how the witch has progressed through history, who the witch has become. And I just want to do a disclaimer that witch is not just women. Which is fully gender inclusive of anybody who practiced magic, anybody who was a healer, anybody who identified with that word from its beginning until now. If you hear meowing, that is my cat. She also believes that she is a witch. Yeah, so let's just go. I know that some of you have your cameras off, so I'm not sure if you'll want to, I guess you can speak or type. Just so that I know, tell me your name, kind of where you are in the world, and what is your current relationship with the word witch? So do you have a positive relationship with it? Are you kind of over it? Is it just fairy tale kind of word for you? Just so I can kind of gauge where everybody's at. You can either speak it or type it.
I'll actually go then. My name is Jackie. I'm from Chicago, and I have no problem with the word witch. I think it's a wonderful word. So yeah.
Nice.
My name is Andrea Befana. Oh, are you done or no? Sorry.
Go ahead.
Oh, okay. My name is Andrea Phoenix, and I'm from Ottawa, Canada. And with the term of witch, I was always kind of leery of it as a child, but as growing up, I got interested through a book I was reading, and I ended up being involved with the Wiccan Church of Canada. And I got dedicated by the high priestess there, Tamara James.
Wow.
And so I use this also for my own fun. I'm also a Christian, and I think they can go hand in hand pretty good.
I agree. Thank you.
Hang on just a second. Hi, I'm Rebecca. Rebecca, everybody knows me. I am from Florida, originally from California. I've been actually, my day in a year will be September 30th in the Wicca. So I'm kind of excited about that. And I just have had things happening to me all my life, never really understood it. So I wanted to go deeper into it, and I'm finding out a lot of things that I can do, and it's very, very exciting.
That's so exciting.
Yeah.
Hi, I'm Honey from Indiana. I've been pagan for a couple years now. I say pagan because I don't necessarily have a specific path. I'm polytheistic and believe in many nature related qualities to many different pagan paths. So I just go with a broad term. And I personally like the word witch. I think it's cool. Most it probably denotes a pointy hat. I just more think a magical being.
Yeah. And it's interesting you brought up the hat. We'll talk about the hat.
Hi, I'm Amy. I live in Florida, I'm originally from California, and I actually live with Becca and her family. I just started, I don't know that I'm a witch or I'm not a witch. I started learning things with her, and then at the academy, I'm not sure if things have ever happened to me. I've been told that I do have powers, but I just have them blocked. So I'm just learning as I go, and I am an atheist. So I don't really believe in any organized religion, indoctrination. I had that, force fed Christianity, Baptist as a child. So
All right, cool. Anybody else? Before I look at the comments? Okay. We have Sky from Aurora, Colorado. Very positive experience with the word witch. We have Kristen from Baltimore. No real relationship with the term witch, always interested in learning. We have Chris from Denver, Colorado. I do consider myself a witch. I'm fascinated with the history and what the word can and does mean. And then we have, oh gosh, Tati. Is that how you say it? From Colorado. Learning now and a few books related. Cool. Yeah, so I'm going to try not jump the gun because next week is all about the modern witch and witch talk and how people have, embodied the witch today. But let's rewind. And I'll just say for me, I do identify as a witch. I do identify as pagan. And I think that my relationship with the word witch and the identity of witch has evolved so much because at first I felt like I needed like a magical qualifier. Like if I can see a dead person and if I can turn a candle on by myself, then I'm a witch. And like, I feel like I needed to like prove it. But then when I realized that it's deeper than that, it's juicier than that. It's something that you embody. It's something that you just innately are. It is an archetype. For some, like the free wise woman, the high priestess is connected to the word witch. Goddess is connected to the word witch. And so it's this wise, smart, bad, I don't know if I can curse on camera, person who knows her innate power and knows the way that she shows up is enough and knows how to take up space. And so this is somebody who can celebrate from the inside out. So I think a lot of times we are living in a world where we're trying to fit this mold and fit in and get acceptance from other people. And the more confidence that we suppress and the more our self-expression we take away from our daily life, the less that we could be tapped into that full embodied yes and that full embodied witch. And so when you learn more about where witch comes from and where witches are today, and a side note, I'm adopted, so I don't know a lot of my lineage, but when I learn about witches, I feel like that's kind of my birth line, my birthright. So I think anybody can claim that. So I am going to reference a couple books. I'll tell you what they are. I don't have slides, but I'll read wicked slow. I'll read wicked slow. And if you have any comments or questions, just raise your hand with the button or just put in the chat and I'll stop and I'll unmute you or about it. And we can talk about your question. So the first book that I am referencing, if I can find it, is Secrets of the Witch. I love the artwork in this book. It is an initiation into the history and wisdom. Julie Leger, I can type it at the end. Elsa and Laura. But I want to talk a little bit about the different words before witch. So in Eastern Europe and Russia, it was Baba Yaga, if you've heard of Baba Yaga before. And it was in Slavic mythology. Baba Yaga is an old woman with wild hair who guards the entrance to hell. So already we're kind of hinted at this like dark, like kind of demonic, spooky woman. It is said that her mouth can stretch from the ground to the gates of hell, and that she uses it to devour travelers who pass her. So dark, right? This is like not a woman you want to mess with and invite over for dinner. Famed for her great wisdom and knowledge, she uses them to help those whom she believes to be worthy and pure. She lives deep in a forest in a wooden house and stands on chicken legs. The gate that surrounds her house is made from the bones of the dead. So again, this is Eastern Europe and Russia. There's many different kinds of witches, but and I think Baba Yaga is also in a children's book. There's a Baba Yaga children's book, I think. But yeah, then she kind of also, this witch also kind of reminds me of the Hansel and Gretel witch a little bit because of the house, the description of like the house, except it's candy. Then we have in Italy, the Befana, Befana, and often unkindly described as a badly dressed old woman who is said to fly around on a broomstick. This might make her sound like a traditional storybook witch, but according to Italian folklore, she is kind. At Christmas, she brings gifts to good children and charcoal to naughty ones. Where have we heard this before? She's the OG Santa Claus. The legend dates back to ancient Rome, and when Italy became Catholic, it was rewritten by the church. St. Nick. The Catholic version says Befana refused to help the three kings find the baby Jesus. She later regretted her decision and tried to make up for it by giving out gifts to sleeping children in the hope that one of them might be Jesus. This is how the Catholics decided to change this very kind woman into Saint Nick gone wrong. We have one more, which is Yama Uba, which is a witch in Japan. So that's YAMA-UBA. Yama Uba. She is the witch of the mountains. She is an old woman with long white hair who dresses in a distinctive disheveled red kimono. She also has the power to change her appearance and trick her victims. It is said that her mouth is as wide as her head and that her hair can transform into snakes. She lives in the depths of the forest, and if a stray traveler crosses her path, she will eat them. So it's very similar to that Baba Yaga, large mouth, eating people. And then my next question, and you do not have to answer this question, but if you were to sort of create your witch character, like if you were a witch amplified, like what would you call yourself? Where would you live? What would your name be? Kind of like what would be your defining characteristics that you would implement into your witchhood? So like I know I would be definitely more of a mountain witch in the cliffs, connected to dragons. I know nothing about herbs. I wouldn't as a witch and I wouldn't as a person. So I would not be doing that, but I would definitely work with candles and work with light and have light color magic in that way. And I would be able to, I want to fly. I want to fly. I'm going to be able to fly, and I can heal people. Those are my thoughts. So we can have like 2 people if you want to, and then we can move on.
I kind of relate to the second one from Italy, giving presents out to children, and I'm a big giver. I love to give, and it just makes me feel so good, and I know it makes the other person feel good as well. I would say I'm more of a eclectic or eclectic. I mean, I dabble with everything, and I love to learn all the time.
I love that.
I think I would like to be like in the, like you, in the mountains, but like in between the mountains, like where a lake is, and like, you know, not lots of trees, lots of beautiful trees around me. And just basically like that person that everyone goes to when they need help, when they need, like on Pirates of the Caribbean, you remember the lady that lived that they all went to, and
Yeah.
the gypsy lady or whatever, the black lady,
Yep.
she was really cool. That's kind of who I would envision myself being, like that.
I love that. Yes, I can see that.
Yeah.
Anybody else?
I don't know what kind of witch I would be, but I do see myself working with herbs. We're starting gardening, where I'm taking the herbalism classes, the foraging classes, and I've started making all natural body and hair care products. So
Cool.
that's what I'm, you know, I've never really had hobbies. I had children, so didn't have hobbies. And then, you know, kids grow up, you just work. And then, you know, life happens. But now we're doing stuff, and actually have a green bean plant over there going crazy. I've never seen anything like it, but it's really cool.
Oh, that's so cool.
If I may, I would want to travel all over the world and learn from as many witches and other folks as I can about anything, but especially magical related stuff, and search for, like you were saying, mythical beings, dragons, griffins, just for nymphs, negas, just anything I can.
Nice. I love that. I love that you know so many other names too. Let's see the chat. Okay, Jackie said, I would think of myself as a water witch, but I am a healer of light and energy. So for me, I would be the overall around witch, being able to do it all, working in the nature, but water being my main focus of being able to bring the healing through that. Love that. I would be strong, and I would be knowledgeable in that sense of being able to heal that way as well. Awesome. And then Chris shared earlier, I think most people who do identify with the concept of witch are those people who are in one way or another are outsiders. Yes. So that's actually something that we're going to talk about a little later, but usually somebody who is or who was suspected to be a witch is definitely the like the outsider, like the person who's kind of like on the outskirts of society, who doesn't have like the picket fence and the, you know, perfect husband and the job, like, you know, she's, you know, anybody who's independent and powerful is not something's obviously up, right? anybody who has a quirk or somebody who does things unlike other people, definitely suspected. Which is what makes people so magical, right? It's the quirks and the kinks that brings that magic and power to people. And yet, back then, or the common folk think otherwise. So I know that somebody brought up the hat. So I'm going to read a little bit about the history of the hat. It's just like a little doodad. But although the black pointed hats are not quite as old as some of the other images associated with witches, their origin is important. Many of our sisters, that's just how the book is written, who were victims of the Inquisition were forced to wear headdresses during their interrogations as a means of humiliation. The shape also resembles the hats that Jewish people were forced to wear in certain regions during the Middle Ages as a means of marking them out. So people would wear the hats as a way of kind of like the scarlet letter, except it was the pointed hat. The broomstick, at first sight an everyday object, the broomstick escapes domesticity once it is in the air, where it offers unparalleled freedom to those who ride it. A symbol of the home and of the chores typically left to women, the broomstick had a very different significance in ancient times, where it was used to preserve the purity of temples and shrines. According to Breton superstition, it is bad to use a broomstick at night because it chases away the protective spirits who guard the house. And then the last one object that I will talk about is the wand. The wand is a very ancient symbol of magic and clairvoyance. Clairvoyance is being able to see things not perceived by the senses. Caduceus, Caduceus.
It's a caduceus. I have
Thank you.
I have it tattooed on my ankle because I'm a nurse. Isn't that weird?
Yes, I love that. So it is the thank you. It's the wand surrounded by two snakes. And it is associated with Hermes and Asclepius, the Greco-Roman gods of medicine. In the Odyssey, Circe, oh gosh, I should have done tongue twisters before this, waved a wand to cast your spells. Among the Celts, druids and druidesses used wands, which symbolized the influence they had over the elements. Wands are often made of hazel, a tree considered to have magical properties because its roots plunge deep underground and so unite it with the underworld. So in regards to the what people, because we talked a little bit about them being the kind of the outsiders or like scapegoats, the things that they were perceived or accused of doing that made them witches, just to name a few things, there's quite a few, are, where did it go? You would have the devil's mark. So people believe that witches had sworn allegiance to the devil, and that when they did, he marked them with his clawed hands. Given how the devil is by nature deceitful, these marks could take many different forms, such as scratches, birthmarks, moles, and warts. And even if at first no mark was found on you, worry not, for the judges would discover one by any means possible. People were accused of bringing rain, lightning, hail, poisoning the water in wells, spreading the plague, killing babies for food, causing stillbirths, worshiping the devil on a Sunday, God forbid, causing illnesses of all kinds as a form of revenge on our neighbors, or punishing a man who wanted to be with another woman. They were suspected if They lived on the margins of society, as we were talking about. They didn't want to get married. If they fell in love, if they didn't go to church, if they went to church too often, if their rosary beads were worn out, if they moved too often, if they had too many boyfriends, if they argued with their neighbors, if they were rude, if they walked alone at night, if they failed to heal someone's illness, or even worse, if they did heal someone's illness. So basically, existing. If you exist, you're a witch and you're stuck. So I know I absolutely would have been accused as being a witch. Tenfold, no doubt about it. They're like, this girl sings in the car and has a mole on her face and plays with kids and laughs too hard. She's definitely a witch. So, but I think it's so interesting that we have this inherited witch wound, because all of these things that we should love about ourselves, we've inherited this belief that these are wrong. These are going to get us killed. These things are going to be the things that we need to silence in order to keep us safe. Like, our body has a blueprint that is pre-programmed with defense mechanisms to keep you small, to keep you quieter so that you're safe and don't die. And so I think a lot of what we need to reprogram and find expansion in is being able to tap into the things that we deem bad, shadow work, deem bad, and then step into their full expression, claim that confidence, and rewrite that story. Easy peasy. Just kidding. But I think that if you just take that first step and acknowledge, wow, these things would have made me a witch, but I like being a witch. So I kind of want to be accused because then I'm in my truth. And I think that once you're in your truth and once you're in your power, it's much harder to put out your fire. No pun intended, considering that a lot of witches were burned at the stake. But the point of this section, before we move on to the discussion about doulas and midwives and how those were specifically targeted, closing up this section of where they came from, there's a reason why magic was deemed bad, because magic was the higher, more accessible, free way to empower yourself and heal others. That magic puts a lot of people out of a job. Magic puts a lot of people in a place where they're unable to overpower another human being. And so when we tap into that power, and we become, I'm going to say my favorite word, I hope it's okay to say online, unfuckwithable. Once you're unfuckwithable, you can't get hurt because people can't mess with you because you're so aligned in your magic. People, and I just put this together in a seminar that I was in the other day, royalty, queens and kings, wear crowns, gold crowns on the crown of their head. So they constantly have a gold crown of protective, aligned, holy energy around their being, around their body. And wouldn't it be great if we could all just tap into our witches and our crowns? Just saying. When we talk about doulas and we talk about midwives, I'm going to talk a little bit about the history of where that shift happened from when they were celebrated to when they were silenced. So,
Can you give me a litter, a bag of litter?
I don't have any litter.
Sorry, I thought I was muted.
It's okay. So, in colonial America, and I'm just going to talk about, like, this is a Europe lens. White women were led to believe that they were facing eternal judgment from God based on how they birthed. Many coping techniques used by midwives were considered magic and therefore banned. And it was considered indecent for white women to make too much noise while in labor. Meanwhile, Black women and their babies were considered to be the property of someone else. During the 19th century, the white elite were largely replacing female midwives with male physicians coming back from training in Europe. So, where did they go? It was difficult for women to become formally educated because they were not allowed in those circles, and even more difficult for women of color. So midwives couldn't go to school. They couldn't organize. Without the funds and education and the ability to organize, midwives had no way to compete. The first physicians were trained to use forceps as the standard of care, even though the misapplication of forceps resulted in increased perineal lacerations, uterine trauma, and fetal defects in patients. So they were already trained wrong. And for the first time ever, the rich were more likely to die during childbirth than the poor, because the poor were working with midwives instead of fancy physicians, because the midwives knew what they were doing and the physicians did not. One of the craziest things that I learned, and by the way, this is from Why Did No One Tell Me This? The Doula's Honest Guide for Expecting Parents. I'll put that in there at the end. Physicians were busy proselytizing about their medicine. Many thousands of women were dying instead inside of their hospitals. Why? Because physicians weren't washing their hands between patients. And this was causing something called childbed fever to run rampant. Lack of hand washing was shown to be the cause of this fever, almost 65 years before physicians would agree to hand washing practices. Childbed fever rates were much lower for those giving birth at home. So the mindset that it was safer and more important to control the birth process than care for the well-being of our birthing people continued through the 1970s, with extreme medical solutions, including intense medication, twilight sleep, sedatives, and restraints, such as being kept in cage-like beds and put in straitjackets while in labor. No exaggeration. Through this time, only about 9% of medical students were women, which means even fewer were working as OBGYNs, and even fewer of these were women of color. So, as far back as the mid-1920s, studies show that there could have been the midwives could have had better outcomes than physicians. Midwives were still seen, in the words of one physician, as filthy and ignorant. Yet American College of Obstetricians and Gynecologists has published guidelines for how to talk pregnant women out of home birth. While studies show that states that utilize more midwives have better maternal and infant outcomes, only about 8% of Americans utilize midwifery care. And if you weren't horrified enough, prisons still use shackles in childbirth. At present, the US has a cesarean rate of almost double what the World Health Organization recommends, and 41% of birthers say their practitioner tried to induce them. While there is so much about this process we can't control, what we can control are the providers we choose to support us through the experience. So there are so many holy shit facts in this. And that is just one zoomed in profession of these magical inherited wisdom, wise women, witches that were deemed filthy, ignorant. You don't know what you're doing. So this white doctor, this white male doctor, is going to put you on your back and induce you, and you're not going to birth the way that your body is meant to birth. Also, I don't quote me on this, but I did hear that one of the King Henrys had a kink about watching women give birth on their back, that is why it has continued as the standard practice today. Don't quote me, but somebody said it to me and I think it's hilarious. But I think that it's so baffling to me that we have these people with a uterus that have the ability to grow and give life, and they are not the people that are asked how they want to go about doing that. And then once they've done it, we focus on the baby, not the person who just did the birthing. There is another piece of information that I want to share before I get off of my, oh my God, how can people talk this way? About, hold on. How's everybody doing? Anybody need a bathroom break? Anybody need a joke? I got dad jokes for days if you want me to help you with an interlude. The United States fertility. Today, the United States has the worst maternal mortality rates among developed nations. The best estimate saying half could have been avoided. We spend way more money on maternal care than other nations that have better outcomes. It's very sad. And there's a reason I'm talking about birth. There are many other professions that have witches that are professionals. There's your uterus grows. Yes, we know. If I don't find it in 2 seconds, I'll stop. This is talking about how your body works and how you can give birth to a baby. Okay, well, basically what I'm trying to find, there's a section in here that talks about how way back when you were pregnant, the baby didn't belong to you. It was a holding place for the man's child, and the baby was not safe until it was birthed and touched by a male pair of hands. Which I wish I could find a direct quote because it's insane. But the point is, it's so inherited that we have this, like, we have magic, and yet we're saying, shh, not now. I mean, you did great, but not now. But now let's talk about, how are we doing on time? Perfect. The modern witch, not so modern, we're talking about next week, but I want to talk a little bit about the modern witch that is discussed in this book, that I think it would be really cool for you to know this part.
Can I
At the
just make
beginning
a
of-
quick comment?
Yes, of course.
I don't have this facility to raise my hand. I can just unmute myself.
Go for it.
But the wonderful thing is that the midwives are being used much more nowadays.
Yes.
It's gone back to the other way, which you have a choice of either or.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And I love that. And I am actually in the process of becoming an adoption doula. So I'm not doing the actual birth piece, but I'm helping people who are either finding a family for their child or receiving a child from another family, help with that transition process, because I said I'm adopted. And so I'm very connected to that process. But I think originally I was thinking about the birth process, and that's why I have all these birth books. I think it's crazy. But it's amazing that it's being utilized now. And we're learning so much about informed consent as a doula, which is when you go in to speak to your practitioner, your physician, whoever, they have to tell you everything about what they're going to do before they put their hands on your body. They have to tell you everything about the medication, about the procedure, before they are allowed to do anything. And you can always say no. And if you do not like what this physician is saying, you have the right to ask for another physician. You are 1000% in control of what happens to you and your body when you are in that room. 110 million percent. If somebody tries to tell you otherwise, they are not your people. So important. And that applies to everything. That applies to everything. If anybody wants to touch your body, if anybody wants to put anything in you, if anybody wants to give you anything, like, you got to know who, what, where, when, why. And if you don't like it, the answer is no. So at the beginning of the 20th century, the dancer Mary Wigman choreographed the first solo created by and for a woman in a piece known as Witch Dance. While the Argentinian surrealist artist Leonor Fini drew a whole string of them perched on brooms. In the 1970s, feminist movements rid the word witch of its negative associations. People began instead to celebrate the witches for the freedom and independence that they symbolize. In France, in 1975, the journalist Xavier Guattier founded a literary and artistic feminist magazine that she called The Sorceries, Witches. And in the United States, on Halloween 1968, the Women's International Terrorist Conspiracy from Hell, or WITCH, armed with cauldrons and pointed hats, cast a spell on the New York Stock Exchange, and the next day, the stock market reportedly dropped 5 points. These feminist campaign groups protested against a violent and capitalist society that was run by and for the benefit of white men. Even today, witch blocks, BLOCS, still exist in activist circles, and during demonstrations, the women parade dressed as witches, performing rituals aimed at bringing down all forms of oppression and exclusion. As far as witch hunts go today, the expression witch hunt no longer refers only to those that saw our sisters, says it in the book, lose their lives, but also describes the attempt to hunt down and persecute people who have been made into scapegoats. So this is what we were saying earlier. But even the old types of hunts still exist in some regions across the world. Saudi Arabia, for example, has a religious anti-witch police force, and witchcraft still figures a crime punishable by death. In some Indian villages, women who are said to be witches are persecuted and murdered, but accusing someone of practicing witchcraft is punishable by the law. In Ghana, witch camps exist for hundreds of women who are forced from their communities following accusations of witchcraft. Deprived of the right to defend themselves, the victims are often widows, sometimes single, and are often victims and often accused without proof of causing the deaths of loved ones, of poor harvests, or even of not having given birth to a boy. Across centuries and continents, fear and superstition combine with envy and result in women being blamed and hurt. From the Witch Protest Group's manifesto, it says, witches have always been women who dared to be groovy, courageous, aggressive, intelligent, nonconformist, explorative, curious, independent, revolutionary. You are a witch by being untamed, angry, joyous, and immortal. And again, not just women. This, I can't change the text in the book, but I think that it is so important to understand the roots of where witch came from. And now the Women's International Terrorist Conspiracy from Hell is a real group. It's crazy. And the last piece is kind of stepping away from the history part that I want to tell you about is a goddess that I just learned about, who is, she's a modern goddess, and she is the epitome of the combination of all these fierce, fiery, revolutionary witches, and it is Babylon. You know about the witch Babylon. You know about the goddess Babylon. This is an incredible book, highly recommend. Approaching Babylon, Essays for the Abyss. And I will read to you about her. Babylon is a modern goddess. She has risen like a tide in response to 2,000 years of the repression of the divine feminine in the West. Babylon is represented in a series of archetypes: the divine feminine, the great mother, the succubus, the initiatrix, the holy whore. She is often viewed as the female sexual impulse, or else as lust, but these are limited simplifications. Instead, we should understand that through working with Babylon, we can come to experience divinity in all aspects of our physicality. She is strength, joy, ecstasy. She is the glory of life and love, of passion, desire, instinct, conflict, war, and cruelty. She is the divine mother who kills everything she creates, and this is the glory of the world. Alongside her great beast, she represents the mysteries of polarity, which is the basis of sex, but also of all difference and otherness in the world. Therefore, she also indicates spaces beyond the polarities of heterosexual difference, multitudinous spectrums of difference. She symbolizes great strength and the drawing, calling, evocative depths that could appear as passivity. She tells us that the mysteries of sex are not as they first appear, and they are the indistinguishable mysteries of death. So she talks a lot about how sex and death are like similar, because of the just how the world goes round. It's creation. It's, we have sex, we have pleasure, and then that moment ends. We live, we die, we have pleasure in between, and it's this. I want to say filth. They say filth in the book, but I think it's just about how we can be messy and sexy, and this is all genders, right? Messy, sexy, connected to pleasure, connected to your body, and not deemed horrible and damnable. So she actually she's very similar to Santa Muerta, which is a witch of death. I don't think it's a witch, goddess of death in the Mexican culture. But she has goddess of Babylon, Lady of the Abyss, has a very similar cult following. She's very new, hot on the market. And so does anybody, so I gave you a lot. I always feel like I talk a lot and then I stop and then I get nervous that I took up space. Then I remember I'm teaching and I think that's okay. But do you have any comments, questions, insights, things that surprised you, things you want to know more about?
This goddess of Babylon, or goddess Babylon, she sounds like it's like an accumulation of a lot of different goddesses into one. So that's kind of cool. I think they said she's a combination of Ishtar, Eurydice, what was the other one? Ishtar, Eurydice, Persephone, Bearskin. I don't think I've heard of that one. Yeah, so she's all of the very tapped in, like, sacred slut, screw the patriarchy right? And,
Goddesses.
and it's like the underworld too, like from the dead.
Yes.
Like that would be like Hathor in Egypt, like the
Yep.
goddess, the goddess of death and the underworld. So yeah. And she's also a goddess of love. So
Exactly.
yeah.
I just had a question to go back as far as what sort of markings on the body to determine whether you're a witch or not. I understood that there was sort of like a birthmark.
Yeah.
But was there anything else? There was a mole,
Yep. Mole, warts.
warts.
And then I knew there was another one. Going back, going back, going back.
Scratches.
Scratches. Yep.
Scratches. Okay.
Um,
Scars.
moles, warts, scars. So yes. And I think the interesting. Leave the lizard alone. No, leave the lizard alone. The the thing to note is that if there wasn't a scratch that they initially saw, they could get real like, oh, you have a cut on your toe. You are a witch. Like it's as zoomed in as possible. Any sort of impurity, any marking, you were accused.
That's a good thing I wasn't.
Oh, go
Sorry.
ahead. No, you go ahead.
It's a good thing that I wasn't born years ago because I've got a mole and I've got actually a double nipple.
Mm,
And I've been told
yeah.
that that's a witch's mark.
yeah, you're a witch in multiple countries, probably. With that marking.
Yeah, I definitely would have been accused, with or without the marks, just the rebellious and I've said it over and over again that if I had been born in a different country, I probably at some point in time would have been put to death. Just because I'm like that. I'm a Scorpio, so just like it wouldn't have gone well. And when we were talking about the things that they did when women were giving birth, yeah, I don't know how well that would have gone over. Them trying to strap me down or put me in a cage.
Yep.
And there was this
And a straight jacket. Yep.
yeah. Oh yeah, God. No,
Mhm.
no, that would not have been fun. And there was on Family Guy, there was this skit they did, this piece they did where they were all in school and it was back in the days and they were doing math and they asked a math question, a girl answered and the teacher was a male obviously and he was like, very good, that was the correct answer. A girl answered a math question, you're a witch.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
Any excuse to say that you're a witch so that they can burn you.
Right.
But
Well,
I
think it's
just heard
like,
in Salem, they had their last honoration of the last witch that they hung. So they're all exonerated now.
oh,
Wow.
oh, that's good. I was going to say something. I don't know. Someday it might come back to me. I can't remember right now.
I have a question. Are you going to be able to write the names of those books that you were reading
Yes.
from in the chat? The only reason is because I couldn't write them down quick enough. Sorry.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. The books, I can even put the page numbers of where I read from the books. If you are interested in getting them and just kind of finding where I was. And I can actually just do that right now.
Are you going to be using those books for the series?
Yes, definitely the Secrets of the Witch one. The doula one probably not as much. But and I think the Babylon book is just cool. I think it's just cool to know more about her. But yeah, let me type it in. Secrets of the witch. Sorry, I'm on my iPad, so if I look slightly slanted now, that's why. Because you were upright before. Because if I don't do that, it looks like I'm not looking at you.
Oh my God, you have a bruise on your arm. You're a witch.
No, it means I have a dog. Which obviously means that I'm a witch. I have a cat, I have a dog, I have a snake, I have a lizard. I'm screwed. White and Laura Perez. Okay, that's the first book. And we've got Gretchen, Babylon. And it's not Babylon, the location, like Babyylon. It's Babalon. Very different stories behind those things. Essays. Oops, that's not how you spell that. Essays of the Abyss. And this is by Georgia Van. Oh my God, I was talking to actually the author's partner of this book, and I kept saying Gloria. I felt so bad. I was like, I love Gloria's writing so much. It's Georgia. Sorry. I messed up. Okay, so those are the.
Go ahead.
Go ahead.
I was
gonna say those
talking.
books.
I didn't realize I was muted, but we have a lot of frogs that like hang up and hang out in the corner of our ceilings on the patio. And I was out last night sometime just sitting here on my tablet and got dive bombed by a frog. It just flew right into me.
Oh my God.
I just thought that was so weird. I mean, Becky says it's normal, but I've never been dive bombed by a frog before, so.
I haven't either. That's definitely a message. Okay, and that's the doula's one. So those are the three books that I used tonight. There is a book that I didn't use, but I really, really think would be so cool if you got. It's called Major Arcana, Portraits of Witches in America. And it is a book of modern witches, of just photographs of witches today from all over the world and their story. So we have like pictures.
Can you write
that are really
that one too? Honey?
beautiful. Yeah, I'll put it in there. But it's like, and I think that it's cool that it's the Major Arcana because this is like the main people of today.
That is so cool.
Yeah, I'm obsessed. So we've got last one, Major, Major Arcana, Portraits of Witches in America. Oops. America. Francis F. Denny. Cool. That's it. If you're interested in that one, it's so flipping cool. Does anybody have anything that they were hoping that they would get from tonight that they did not, or anything that they did not expect to get tonight, but glad that they did? Just so I can get a framework of how to better show up for you next week.
I was glad that we got to talk about like where we pictured ourselves if, we were, just a witch somewhere in nature or in the society or whatever, like just being out where we would picture ourselves doing our practices and how we would do it. That was kind of cool.
I didn't have any expectations. I really didn't know what to expect. I just thought the whole thing was really cool, being a newbie or whatever, a rookie. Well, what I named my student page, witch in training. So
Love that.
I thought it was really cool. Everything that we learned, it was awesome.
Nice, thank you.
I just want to mention you're talking about the birth doulas. We know about those pretty well. And then they have, you mentioned about the adoption doula. I never heard of that. And then I got information from someone about a death doula. And
Yep.
so I'm going to follow up on that on the course and see how it can apply to me. I may not be able to apply it to other people unless it was online because I'm in a wheelchair. So, I mean, I'm just in the start of it to investigate it. But they have death doulas now. And
Yeah.
Yes, they do have death doulas, and it goes through like a hospice. Because I'm a nurse and I was doing home health care. So I have been hearing about that, and they usually correlate with hospice.
Yeah,
So,
that's how I heard about it is through the hospice community. So I know personally this is the way I want to go.
Yeah. And I think the cool concept that I'm realizing about a doula is like just the definition of doula is helping someone get from point A to point B, whatever that transition is. So a birth doula helps transition somebody into the world, birth, death, but also adoption is a huge shift. There's also people who are doulas that help people transition. If they are transitioning from male to female or female to male, there are doulas that can work with someone going through that. There is a doula position for people who are going through abortion. Anything that you are going through. I mean, obviously the main transitions that happen are birth and death. But there's so much that happens on this plane that doulas can really help with.
Wouldn't that then be considered like a healer of some sort? Like in like Native American, it's like the medicine woman, basically. Wouldn't that be considered? I mean, so they can actually be different forms of I don't want to say titles, but like in different religions, you have this person who worships this one, and this one who worships this one, and this one who worships, but we're all kind of one. We all believe the same way. We all, it's that concept of that, and that's what I think scares people so much, and that's why the word witches has made such a horrible impact in the world, because everybody has been afraid of that term for so long.
Yes.
And when you were talking about like the hats and the brooms and stuff, it's interesting because at Halloween time we dress our children up as witches. We put them in little hats, and so it's like putting the little scarlet letter on them, basically to say, hey, look at this child. I mean, and back in the day, that would have actually got these children killed,
Yeah.
when you think about it. But as a society now, we think, oh, it's so cute. Look at, she's dressed up as a witch. But for the people who are actually in that mindset of a witch, it's like, is that a slap in their face? When we dress our children up like that, or we proclaim them to be that way, for all the ridicule that they had to go through back when all the burning was happening. So it's that concept that, it makes it hard for not only women, but I think men that are considering themselves as witches to have to endure that at the end of the day.
Yeah, I think it's interesting because I think a lot of people also don't know. Like, I think, and that's why classes like this bring the little things like that up, like this is the history of cribs, this is the history of the hat, because I have very strong opinions about dressing your children up as Native Americans for Halloween. I don't think that's okay. I don't think it ever will be okay. But I think that dressing your child up as a witch, it's heated in a different way. Again, no pun intended with the fire, but it's heated in a different way because you're poking at history that is not talked about. Like I don't remember ever sitting in social studies and learning about paganism, right? Like I learned, 1492, Columbus sailed the ocean blue, but I didn't learn like the origins of the earth. And so it's just something to note, it's knowledge is power. And
Yeah, I
think
definitely,
that-
I think if our society were to teach things that would broaden our minds a little more and have us step outside of our comfort zone and outside of our box, our world would probably be a different place.
Oh yeah.
It would definitely be a different
100%.
place, and I think it would help people to, I'm not going to say love each other and be all peace and flower power here, but it would bring some peace to the world. It would bring some peace to people who have different things going on in their lives that end up causing our world to be in chaos the way it is. And it's a shame that it has to be coming so late in life. It's coming so to a point where we're struggling now in this world to try to correct things that have happened for centuries. So, I mean, I appreciate this class because I've learned so much. And the fact that it wasn't just based off of, hey, just one culture, it's numerous cultures. And that's what makes it so much more interesting. It's that background to it, that there's witches in all cultures that are all being persecuted and it's all being taken for granted from what they can actually teach us. We're healers, we're people that are here to save people, but yet when we try to save them, we get deemed as, oh my God, let me slap you on the hand and now burn you.
Mhm.
Oh, sorry, I won't get off my soapbox.
I think that goes with anything. People are afraid of what they don't know, whether it be witches or your politics or your religion or whatever. People are afraid of things they don't know and they react to that. And you can only change people in your own little world. You can't go out there and try to change everybody's mind about everything you believe in. You start with your circle of friends or your family or your whatever. And all you could do is present them with the knowledge, and whether they want to accept it, learn it, retain it, and learn from it, that's up to them. You've done all you can do, and you can't let things like that weigh you down. You're going to be you, and that's it. You can accept it, just like anything, just like, being a witch, being gay. It's not about choices, it's who you are. So when you accept it and you live your life fully and happily and joyously being yourself, other people will see that, and talking in like this, people learn things. Even if you think you know everything, you don't know everything. You'll never know everything. It's just great to be able to hear other people, things they've gone through. And like what you were saying, back in the day, I mean, I was aware of the Salem witch trials and everything, but like I said, these doctors, they'd have been in a world of hurt trying to deliver our babies.
Yours
would
and
not have
mine
been
both,
pretty
honey.
sight.
I would have been called everything in the book trying to have my babies. That ain't even no lie. They would have been burning me right after I had the kid. That's about how bad that would have been.
I think it's interesting that we come into spaces and I have a couple thoughts. That you mentioned that we can only control our small circle, right? We only can talk about the things we know and teach the things that we know. However, I also think that there are ways to give information without directly giving information, this like showing and not telling aspect almost. Like I can't necessarily come to you and say like, a witch is powerful. I'll be like, okay. But if I show up and I have confidence and I don't feel like I've been brutally offended by the whoever that insulted me on the street, and I, even though I'm in a lot of physical pain, I get up and still go to work, and I like embody what I'm trying to teach, and I attract those lessons. I think it's a really it's even more powerful, because I think if you tell somebody something, it's hard to buy it. Like, okay.
Sienna, I think you'd love our coffee club. I don't know if you've seen it.
The Saturday one?
Yeah, I think
I know.
you'd love that.
I want to go.
Really open. We talk about anything and everything. It's like a safe place. It's really fun.
Yeah, I think
everybody should come.
I think
Yeah,
that,
I enjoy it.
sometimes the best knowledge is the ones where you don't always have to be so direct, because whatever knowledge you are bringing, it's going to come through you. It's going to shine off of you. It's going to radiate and do what it's supposed to do. Sometimes the best medicine in life is not giving the medicine that is actually going to be shoved down your throat. Put it nicely.
Sienna, I just had a quick question. Is
Yeah.
the class considered finished and we're just having discussion? I'm just expecting a lady at the door, so just so I know, like, I'll have to leave when she comes.
Yeah, I was just doing a general, it turned into a beautiful conversation, but I was just checking in to see if there was something that people wanted to go back and get clarity on, or if there was something that they wished I talked about in general and didn't. But after that conversation, the class was finished. I will say that I am also the founder and creator of Restorative Magic. You might have seen me post some of my events on our page, the divination page. And it is not connected with divination. I just happen to be in both groups. But I am facilitating sacred circles, and I'm doing spiritual coaching, and there's going to be retreats, and there's going to be intensives. And so if you're interested in that kind of magic and you want more of my sputter and sparkle, then you can message me, and it's open to, again, all genders, all races, all bodies, and we can all just make magic together. So that's it. Thank you so much for holding so much space for me. Thank you so much for being so responsive and intuitive and connected throughout this class. It was super, super fun.
Thank you so much for your time and your knowledge and your reading abilities.
Of course. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Sienna. Have a great night.
Thank you. Of course. Alex, do you want to stop recording? I don't know how to do that.